All right, welcome back. So if you saw my video previously talking about or comparing the Corrado DC and the SLX DC from Shimano, I mentioned at the end of that video that there were some other DC reels on the market that, one in particular, that really made the Corrado kind of really made it overpriced. And I said that I preferred, for my money, I'd buy the SLX DC if it was between those two. But given the choice, in looking in the 250-ish range, there's another reel I'd look at instead. And this is that reel. So this is the Scorpion DC from Shimano. It's a 100 size reel. It's got it's a DC reel. The big difference between this and the Corrado, and the reason this is so much better buy than the Corrado is this actually has the IDC 5. And we'll look at that here in a second, but a much more advanced DC braking system than the IDC 4 on the Corrado, and it comes in at roughly the same price point, even ordering it from Japan. So, so first things first with this, like I said, I mentioned it's a 100 sized reel. So what does that mean? Well, in the most part, it means the spool's smaller. So the Corrado DC is a 150. The SLX DC is advertised as a 150 as well. So the spool on them is a little bit smaller, but so it holds less line. But in addition, it also means that the frame of the reel itself can be smaller. So comparing this to the Corrado DC, we can see them side by side. Especially up front, the Scorpion DC is a good bit smaller. If you look at the gear housings on them, the Corrado is a good bit larger there as well, so it sticks down much farther below the reel seat than the Scorpion does. In addition, the difference in weight is, I believe, about a ½ ounce. Pull out a scale here real quick. So spooled with braid, we're looking at 8.2 ounces for the Corrado and 7.7 ounces for the Scorpion, so exactly a ½ ounce difference, both with a full spool. And like I said, this reel is nice and compact. Just basically disappeared in my hand. I got pretty big hands, so. But like I said, let's get this thing open and take a look inside. All right, so the first thing we'll notice on this reel is on the side here, you got the same 1, 2, 3 open dial, or very similar as the Corrado. This one has an automatic setting above 4, but the open on this one opens up or makes a latch here available. As we pop the side plate off, what we notice on the inside of the side plate here is that we've got an arrow. Oops. Got an arrow up top here that points to various line types. So we got nylon, we got PE, so braid, and we got fluorocarbon. So make an adjustment here for your line type, moving this slider around. So fluorocarbon, so arrow lines up with the fluorocarbon. I've got braid on this, so I leave it set on braid, and that adjusts the entire brake profile. So instead of just having one setting on the side, like the Corrado and the SLX did for fluorocarbon, basically a setting for fluorocarbon, a setting for braid or mono, and then kind of a wide open setting, and then a skipping setting. This one gives you, okay, there's a full braking profile for braid, and within that braid braking profile, I can set it to 1 through 4 plus auto. So essentially I've got 3 times as many settings on this reel with specific braking curves varied by line type. So the end result is this reel is a whole lot more flexible and provides a lot more consistent braking tailored specifically to your line type. So kind of a cool setup in that regard. So there's a 100 size spool. Basic spool construction is essentially identical to the Corrado. Like I said, it's just a little bit, the spool's a little bit narrower, and I don't think it's quite as deep. Aluminum frame, fairly small, just like the Corrado, and the SLX is made in Malaysia. And let's go and get the side taken off. Kind of cool how that goes on there. All right, so we got the reel apart here. The got a aluminum star drag with the clip plate built into the top of it, held in with that clip. Kind of normal assembly as far as the Belleville washers. It's a floating drag start, and there's the drag nut. Got 3 machine screws. They come in from the outside around the edge here that thread into the aluminum frame, and then 1 coarse thread that goes through the nose here that threads into the plastic side plate. Side plate's nothing super special. Got 2 ball bearings under the spool tension. One is for the end of the pinion gear to ride on, and then the other is for the end of the spool to ride on. And then there is a second ball bearing, I'm assuming. Yep, there's another ball bearing right here that the pinion gear, the base of the pinion gear and the drive pawl ride on. Brass main shaft, actually, nope, that's aluminum. So anodized aluminum main shaft. Overall, the frame itself is super lightweight, nice and compact, nice and narrow. It looks like there is space where they could have put another super thin ball bearing right here on the outside of the roller bearing, just to hold the roller bearing or the drag sleeve, but they did not. And like I said, grand scheme of things, it's not a super huge deal. But if you wanted to add a ball bearing here, if you could find a skinny ball bearing, you'd get one that fit between this this inner sleeve here, or the inner bearing race, and this outer sleeve. Carbon fiber friction plate, and the drag washer itself is carbon fiber also. So, if that matters to you. For a bass reel, I don't really care. It just doesn't bother me one way or the other. All right, so that's the Scorpion DC. Let's go ahead and throw this thing back together and give some final thoughts. The reason I always pull this thing out with the Shimano reels is there's two little keys here that key into the drag washer. It's just a whole lot easier to get that lined up with the reel disassembled. Set 3 machine screws on the outside. So that's the Scorpion DC. I've fished it a decent bit. I've typically been throwing swim jigs with it. Caught a couple pretty good fish, 5 to 6 pound range, and it didn't have any problem with it. This is the HG, so 7 point whatever to 1 gear ratio version. It was on an ALX rods, skipper, which is a 6.9 medium heavy plus, and I didn't have any problem actually just about throwing all the line off the spool. So this is a 50 pound 832, I believe, braid, and it didn't have any problem just about spooling it on the cast. So with a 1/4 ounce swim jig. So great casting little reel, almost impossible to backlash. Way more flexible for the brake, as far as the brakes go, way more flexible and versatile than the Corrado DC or the SLX DC, for about the same money as the Corrado DC. Now, what's the major drawback to this reel? The big one is the fact that you have to order it from Japan. They don't, for whatever reason, Shimano doesn't see fit to import this reel to the U.S., probably because it'd kill the sales of the Corrado DC. But there are a couple other Scorpion reels as well that are just absolutely fantastic reels. I've got one of their BFS reels that is super, super lightweight and fantastic caster with really, really light lures. And then this reel. So I think if Shimano brought them to the U.S., they'd sell a ton of them. They just discontinue the Corrado DC, although there are some people that would still buy the Corrado DC just because they'd buy into the whole Corrado's the best reel ever made kind of thing. I'm not one of those people, but this is a solid reel. Haven't any issues with it. And like I said, the IDC5 makes this, in my opinion, the best way to spend your money in that 250 to 275 range if you're looking for a DC reel. So, hey, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and share the video with your friends. And next up, be looking at the Metanium DC, and which is kind of their flagship, at least in the U.S. market, DC reel. Until next time, cheers and tight lines.